You know him as Ethan Hunt, you know him as Maverick, and you know him as the guy with no fear, you know him as Tom Cruise. But how does he just keep pushing the limits of these action movies? He doesn't use a stunt double. So buckle up because we're gonna count down the top 10 craziest Tom Cruise stunts. Let's get started. Number 10, the rock climb in Mission Impossible 2. Tom Cruise scaling a 2,000-foot cliff without a harness. Now most actors would just let a stunt double handle this, but Tom trained extensively in rock climbing to pull this off himself. Now the scene takes place at Dead Horse Point in Utah, and if you think it looks terrifying on screen, just imagine being there. You're part of the crew, you know what's about to happen, but when you actually see him go up there with no harness whatsoever, that is an intense day. Tom was gripping the rock face with just his fingertips, balancing the narrow ledges and nothing but air beneath him. And that leap across the gap, that was not CGI, there was no harnesses involved, it was just Tom Cruise risking his life to give us some entertainment. Now the crew was really nervous that day, so they did have safety cables hidden just outside of the frame, but there were no wires or harnesses on Tom Cruise the entire time. And this stunt just set the tone for the Mission Impossible franchise going forward, what Tom Cruise was willing to do, what we could expect. It was a game changer. Number 9, holding his breath for 6 minutes, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. Most of us can barely hold our breath for 30 seconds, but Tom? No. Tom Cruise can hold his breath for 6 minutes, and he did it in a movie. For the underwater break-in scene in Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, Cruise worked extensively with freediving experts and professional divers to make his body function without oxygen for those long durations. Now keep in mind, he didn't just have to sit there and hold his breath underwater, he had to maneuver in the water, he had to control his heart rate, he had to do things while holding his breath for 6 minutes, so that just added to the intensity of that scene. And once again, the film crew was very on edge when this was happening because there were no quick escape routes if he ran out of oxygen, there were no hidden oxygen tanks in the water, it was just all him. And the first time that they were shooting the scene, the director admitted that he was getting anxious and wanted to call for air, but Cruise stayed in character, making sure that the moment looked as authentic as possible. And the result is one of the most intense underwater sequences ever filmed, all done with no camera tricks. Number 8, a knife to the eye, Mission Impossible 2. Look, close combat fighting is always intense, it's always fun to watch, but what if I told you in Mission Impossible 2, when the knife was going straight towards Tom Cruise's eye, that knife was real. During the final showdown in Mission Impossible 2, Cruise insisted that the blade that was used was an actual metal knife. No rubber, no CGI, nothing like that, so the audience could feel the danger. And to make sure that nothing went horribly wrong, they did use a complex wire rig to stop the blade just millimeters before it touched his eye. And the crazy thing is that the stunt team actually measured the distance between the tip of the blade and his eye to get it as close as possible, and one wrong move from Tom Cruise, one slight twitch, would have been disastrous, but they all wanted this for the movie to be as authentic and as real as possible. And you know, you watch the movie and you're gonna assume that that is not a real blade. None of this is actually real. That might not even be a real eye for all we know. No, everything about that was real. Number 7, the real world halo jump, Mission Impossible Fallout. Now jumping out of a plane is one thing, I've done it 3 times, it's a lot of fun. If you haven't done it yet, you've got to try it. But jumping from 25,000 feet at high speeds, pulling your parachute just seconds before hitting the ground, that's a whole nother level. This is the halo jump. It's a high altitude, low opening jump, military style free fall technique used by elite soldiers, and apparently Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible Fallout. And like I said before, this isn't just jumping out of a plane. The conditions for this jump are brutal. At that altitude, the air is so thin that if you don't get your breathing right, you can black out mid-jump. So to make sure that Tom Cruise could do this, he had to train with military experts, he had to do this hundreds of times, and he had to wear a special designed oxygen mask while plummeting towards the earth at nearly 200 miles per hour. And because the director wanted it to be filmed at sunset, there was only one perfect shot that they could do per day to get this right. Oh, and if you thought that this was all done with safety nets, it was not. There was no stunt double, there was no CGI, there was really no room for error because they had to get it on that day, at that time, and everything had to go right to get that shot. Number 6, Burj Khalifa climb, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Hanging off the side of the tallest building in the world for Tom Cruise? No big deal. The Burj Khalifa in Dubai is over 2,700 feet tall, and that's nearly twice the height of the Empire State Building. Instead of relying on green screens or stunt doubles, Cruise insisted on actually climbing, running, and swinging on the outside of that building. He spent months training with stunt experts and special rigging teams to prepare for this stunt, but even with safety cables, one misstep could eventually send him plummeting to his death. And at one point during the filming, his foot actually slipped when he was running on the outside of the building. You know, everyone that was watching's heart stopped at that moment. Watching him scale the windows, dangle from the side, and launch himself into mid-air without hesitation during the scene, that's why this remains one of the most jaw-dropping stunts ever captured on film. Number 5, the helicopter chase scene, Mission Impossible Fallout. By now we all know that Tom Cruise never takes the easy way out when it comes to the action scenes that he wants to do. So when Mission Impossible Fallout called for a high-speed helicopter chase, Tom didn't just sit in the cockpit and let someone else handle the action, he actually learned how to fly the helicopter himself. And you know we're not talking about casual flight training, we're not talking about going left, right, up, down, we're talking about extensive stuff. So to pull this off, Tom trained for over a year, clocking in 2,000 hours of flight time to become a fully licensed helicopter pilot. Most people take months or even years to get comfortable enough to fly solo, but Tom had to master high-intensity maneuvers including right turns, rapid descents, and close quarters flying through mountains, all while performing the scene's choreography perfectly for the cameras. And it's not like he just gets into a helicopter, goes up, and just starts going to do all these things. It's not that simple. It's never that simple with Tom Cruise. The scene itself is just insane. It features Ethan Hunt hijacking the helicopter, chasing down an enemy, and pulling off insane aerial stunts, including a 360-degree downward spiral known as the corkscrew drive. This maneuver, the corkscrew drive, is incredibly dangerous, even with experienced pilots, but Tom performed it all himself, weaving through the narrow mountain valleys while operating the controls. And just when you think it couldn't get any crazier, Tom climbs out of the helicopter mid-flight, dangling from a rope thousands of feet above the ground. Now keep in mind, this isn't a green screen. Once again, this is not a green screen. It's actually him hanging onto a helicopter in mid-air, relying on nothing but his grip and safety rigging. Number 4, flying a fighter jet, Top Gun Maverick. Now I want you to stop and think about this for a second. How many people do you know personally that could pilot a fighter jet? That's next level stuff. No one knows how to do that. Now for Top Gun Maverick, Cruise didn't just sit in the cockpit and let someone else drive that thing. He learned how to operate it and withstand the G-forces that would knock most people unconscious. His training regime included hours in real jets, learning how to handle rapid accelerations, barrel rolls, and high-speed maneuvers. And the result? Every dogfight in this movie feels insanely real because it is real. Even the other cast members that were in the movie had to undergo extensive training just to handle the flight sequences with Cruise leading the charge. Number 3, motorcycle cliff jump, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. Dead Reckoning came out in 2023, and at this point in Tom Cruise's career, at his age, you might think he might start to slow down with those death-defying stunts. Not a chance. For Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, he pulled off what might be the craziest stunt yet, riding a motorcycle off a cliff and base jumping into a free fall. And once again, he did it for real. So let's go ahead and break this down. The stunt required Tom to speed a dirt bike off the edge of a massive cliff, let go of the bike midair, free fall for a few seconds, and then deploy a parachute. All while performing the sequence perfectly for the cameras. There's zero CGI fakery, just pure heart-stopping action that we've come to love from this guy. Now, of course, that stunt that he just did was awesome. It's really cool to see, but the years of training that he did, the dedication that he had to perform this is next level. He spent years training motocross, base jumping, just to make sure that he could pull this off by himself and do it safely. He performed over 500 skydives and 13,000 motocross jumps in training alone, refining his technique until it was flawless. And when it came time to actually do the thing, he did it 6 times. 6 separate jumps off a cliff because he wanted to make sure that they captured every take possible, every angle possible, just like a lot of his other stunts. This guy is willing to do the craziest thing over and over again. He is just, dude's wild. And coming in at number 2, hanging onto a plane, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. For Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, Ethan Hunt had to get onto a plane mid-takeoff. So while most action stars would let someone else do that, a stunt double do that, Tom Cruise was like, nah, I got this, guys. So with nothing but a safety harness keeping him attached, he clung to the side of that aircraft as it roared down the runway and lifted into the sky. Now let's break down what makes this absolutely crazy stunt actually more dangerous than you think. First off, the wind pressure at takeoff speeds is around 150 miles per hour, and that is brutal. That's strong enough to rip a person off the plane if they aren't secured properly. So, like I said before, he was secured to it, but what if something happened? What if he wasn't as secured as they thought he was? He's gone. Then there's the risk of debris. Even the smallest piece of dirt flying at that speed could be like getting hit with a bullet. And let's not forget about the freezing temperatures at that high altitude, which made his eyes water so badly that the team had to create a special contact lens just so he could keep his eyes open. The director wanted multiple takes to capture every single possible angle for the scene, which meant that Tom had to keep going up and doing it again, and up and doing it again, over and over. And that's 8 separate takeoffs clinging to a plane with nothing below him but the ground and open air. And coming in at number 1, speed flying down a mountain, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. Just when you think Tom Cruise has done everything that he could possibly do, he finds a way to push it even further. In Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, he takes on one of the most extreme stunts ever performed, speed flying down a mountain at terrifying speeds. Now, speed flying isn't just regular paragliding, it's a high-speed adrenaline sport that combines paragliding and skiing, where pilots use a smaller, high-performance canopy to descend insanely fast while navigating rugged terrain. That means that you're not just floating gracefully down in the sky, you're diving, you're weaving, you're barely missing the ground as you fly down mountainsides at speeds over 50 miles an hour. Now, for most people, doing this thing, learning this thing, becoming a master at this thing takes years to do, but Tom Cruise is not most people. To prepare for the stunt, he trained for months with professional speed flyers, practicing how to control his descent with pinpoint precision. Because remember, if he messes up on this type of thing, he's gone, just like on everything else in this list. But the key challenge, any wrong movement could send him crashing into the rocky cliffs below. There was, once again, zero margin for error. And here's the crazy part, there were no camera tricks, no stunt doubles, and no CGI fakery. You're starting to see a trend with this top 10 list, aren't you? So once again, what you see is 100% real. It's Tom Cruise soaring through the air just inches above jagged rocks, all for the sake of making one of the most jaw-dropping action sequences possible. Now, when I set out to do this list, I sat down, looked up all the stunts he did across his entire filmography, and the majority of them that are on this list are Mission Impossible because those are the craziest ones. I realized something. Tom Cruise is such an important person in the film industry. He didn't just go out here and make all these crazy movies with CGI, with stunt doubles, with this and that. He is known for doing these things by himself. He set a standard of what should and what shouldn't be used for CGI, and more importantly, what's possible in these action movies. Now, it's no secret that Tom Cruise has way more stunts, way more movies than I listed on my list, but I want to know from you what you think is the craziest, most insane stunt that he has ever done. And if you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, make sure you check out my channel memberships. Just hit that join button below. But if not, that's cool too. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.